Uh-huh.
Kari Wahlgren is an incredible human being inside and out. And she is also one of the most acclaimed voice actors in the business. Her first role was the Vespa-riding Haruko in FLCL.
Yep.
Since then, she has voiced numerous anime characters, including Fu in Samurai Champloo, Saber in Fate Stay Night, Celty in DURARARA. Am I saying that correctly? Kagami in Lucky Star, Anemone in EUREKA 7, Tayuya in Naruto, Saya and Diva in Blood Plus, and Blood Rose in Tiger and Bunny. She has also voiced characters in many U.S. animation shows, including Jessica and Rick's Spaceship in Rick and Morty, Starfire in the DC direct-to-video Teen Titans movies, Zatanna in DC Superhero Girls, Tigress in Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness, Charmcaster in Ben 10, Emma Frost in Wolverine and the X-Men, Shannon in OK Co, Let's Be Heroes, and Lil Susie in Phineas and Ferb. Are you freaking kidding me? Her notable video game roles include Kitana in Mortal Kombat 11, Starfire in Injustice 2, Arania in Final Fantasy, that's a 15, Ash in Final Fantasy 12, Proctor Ingram in Fallout 4, Vex in Skyrim, and Rain in Tales of Symphonia. Have you guys heard all of these incredible credits? I like to embarrass you before we start talking to remind you of your awesomeness.
Thank you. You have done your job. You have done your job. I'm thoroughly embarrassed, and I feel like that's the whole interview. There.
Do you understand how much incredible art that you have contributed to the world, or are you one of those people that's just constantly like, "What's next? What's next?"
I'm a what's next. What's next? Almost, and it's funny because it is a virtue and my biggest fault.
Yeah,
because
the ambitious woman complex.
Exactly. It's the thing of always wanting to keep working hard and not resting on my laurels, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I'm very guilty of not appreciating how far I've come, or, really letting myself enjoy, a couple of accomplishments. So yeah, it's my best virtue and my worst virtue.
I get it, but it gets you to create all these incredible pieces of art, and it keeps you going, and the world wants to hear it. My friend, okay, Kari was at my wedding, but I don't know how she got started in voiceover. So I'm going to ask you how it all began, because you're also beautiful, and so many people think of voice actors as just having a beautiful voice. Did you start in on camera as well? Do you still do on camera? Tell me everything.
Well, it's funny. So I have been wanting to do voiceover since I was a kid. My parents famously tell me that I told them when I was 5 years old, I want to be the voice of a Disney princess one day.
I get it.
So yeah, we were probably both that girl running around the house and singing the songs and acting out the scenes from the movie. I feel like we might be kindred spirit there.
Absolutely.
Yes. But it was interesting because even at that young of an age, I had this idea that there were people doing the voices of these cartoons that I loved so much. So as I grew up, I did a ton of theater, did a lot of singing, and always kind of had an eye towards doing some sort of theater. And and I always had this idea, I'd like to be on camera and do some TV and stuff like that. But voiceover was always part of this dream.
Yeah.
So when I moved out to LA, I got a theater degree at the University of Kansas. And then I worked professionally in Kansas City for maybe a year and a few months, doing everything from voiceover to on-camera commercials and industrial videos and things like that. Did a lot of professional theater. And then I moved out to LA and started trying to get a voiceover agent and started trying to audition for on-camera work. And it was interesting because after a year or so, I was going on these on-camera auditions, and it was so frustrating that it kind of started affecting my attitude just a little bit because, somebody really hot would walk in and they would do this horrible audition, and the people would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're wonderful." It just, whether it's right or wrong. I mean, that sometimes is the nature of the business, but I could feel it kind of getting in my headspace a little bit. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to step back from the on-camera side of things, and I'm just going to focus all of my energy and my attention on voiceover and on that part of my career. And that's when things started taking off.
Isn't that so interesting? The energy you put behind it. The universe, we believe in rewards.
It's a huge thing. And of course, the crazy thing was that years later, because I was so busy doing voiceover and didn't really care as much, then I started doing more on camera. Started booking, started booking more commercials, and did Criminal Minds, and got a recurring thing on Wizards of Waverly Place. And
I didn't know that. It's good for you. Oh my gosh, so fun.
It was super fun. And that was another fun story, that it started out as a character in one little scene,
and they just loved you that much.
Liked it enough that they started writing me into more scenes and episodes. So so that's kind of how
I want to see you in that. That's so cute.
It was very fun. She was this kind of girl. She worked in the wizarding office, and she was very much behind the desk.
See, she can just pull it out. Okay, were you always like a mimic and picking up accents and people's voices like that as you were growing up?
Yes. Definitely, cartoons were such a huge influence. So I was definitely trying to mimic what I was hearing on the cartoons. And then just, anytime I was listening to the radio or radio dramas, there was just such an ear towards creating what I was hearing or taking my own spin on things. So if I was reading stories and books with my parents, I would start doing my own voices for the stories.
Usually the parents are doing that.
I know. Oh yeah.
I'm good.
I would start reading to them before I could read, which was fun. So yeah.
That's incredible. And you're so musical. So she has this incredible music project. I also do my voice for a living. Project. Slot her.
Yes.
SLAU. We'll link it below. But her, HER at the end of it. And so having a musical ear, I imagine, really helped in picking up voices and then creating worlds around it.
It really does. And one thing that I tell anyone who's interested in getting into voiceover is that voice lessons are great, especially if you can't sing.
Yeah.
You should absolutely take it, even if you're what you consider to be a terrible singer, because your voice is your instrument. And voice lessons really help you find new parts of your instrument. My famous example is that, if you're doing a scale and you're like, and you hit that one spot where your break is.
Nice job.
Great, because
hard to do when you can sing.
That's right. But now I know that if my voice can crack right there, I can use it to help create a character.
That's cool.
You will discover things about your voice in voice lessons. And that's the joy of it, the fun.
How do you approach, so then like you came up with this character. When you get an audition, how do you approach it? Do you start with the mechanics of it and the placement? Like we talked about, singers, a lot of, for people who are listening, singers, we learn different placement. You can place it kind of in your mask to sound a certain way. You can place it in your chest and all of these different areas of your body. Are you approaching it from a mechanical perspective first, perspective of the character, or what's your kind of process for that journey?
That's a great question. The dirty urge is to go from the voice first. And you want to go from the acting side first. You want to go from the character first. It's not just about putting on a funny voice.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in taking clues from whatever I'm given. Sometimes you're given a picture. So if you're given a picture and your character has a very big, buck teeth, like a rabbit that has buck teeth, perhaps that's going to influence how this character talks. If there are huge paragraphs, well, you gotta think. If it's a huge paragraph for a Disney show, Disney show is only so long, right? So maybe that means that your character talks really fast, right?
Interesting.
If your character has very short lines, that's also telling, right?
Interesting.
So, then you're going to look for clues like age. Maybe they're going to give you breakdown of certain, where's your character from? That may influence the accent.
Yeah.
What kind of background has your character had? Then you can kind of go into, is this character more jaded or not? So always take the clues from what your audition is like. And every once in a while, biggest pet peeve, I will get this audition that tells me nothing about the character. And in that case, as an actor, you create the story in your head, take as many clues from what's happening in the monologue, but you have to kind of create in your head where this is happening in the story and make the strongest choice that you can.
And go with it.
Because the casting director knows that you don't have all the information. Another clue is the network. If you get a show and a monologue and it's for Nickelodeon Junior, then that's a preschool age, right? So if you have no other information other than the network that it's on, it's going to influence your read.
Absolutely. And knowing, so much of this is knowing the world, like Kari was saying, she grew up and continues to, I assume, watch tons of cartoons to know, okay, this is this world, this is this voice of this world. And the adult audience or the kid audience or the 4 to 6 or the 7 to 9 or they're all different.
It's very different. Like, even something to think about, the difference with villains. If you're on a preschool show, the villain can't be as scary as if you're a villain on a 6 to 10-year-old show. So even that.
And you've played so many good ones.
I love villains.
It's fun, isn't it?
Sure. So.
And do you play a ton of video games too and watch a ton of anime?
I'm a terrible gamer. That is my horrible.
I guess I didn't say, are you good at video games?
Yeah, I'm
like, you
play. So if I ever want to if my character appears in later stages of a video game, I just have to hand it to a good gamer or a 10-year-old and be like, can you get me to the next level so I can just see my cutscene? I'm terrible, but I do watch cartoons for sure.
That's fantastic. And anime too?
I do. Not as much as US animation, but I do watch some anime here and there, especially films.
Yeah. And now you have a little one, so you can just immerse yourself in that all the time.
It gives me, I have to say, the best thing about having a little one, and my little guy is about 1.5. And so when I read him stories and I do all the voices, at the very end, he goes, more. That is better than any
hours later and a late bedtime later. More you say? Yes, I will. Because it's so fun.
It's so sweet. And
that's why we want to do it all the time.
Right. And kids are very honest.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not into it. They're just like.
Do you ever read him your auditions and say, like, what do you think? Well, he's 1.5, so
yeah.
Maybe
there are definitely adult cartoons that I definitely could not read those auditions. So
hey. Also that. Also. That's so fantastic. How did it, because so many people with voiceover, and we can talk about the casting websites and we can talk about the agency side, but I think a big question for people is, how did you get your first agent when you were starting out?
Yeah. My first agent was a regional agent in Kansas City. So, that was a different process than getting my LA agent. But back in the day, it was all through the mail. Now I think things have gone a lot more online with submitting demos and things like that. But it really comes down to persistence and networking. Because, one of my friends once told me that, listen, back in the day when you used to mail in hard copies of your CD voiceover, my friend said, look, the pile of non-solicited submissions is this high, right? This huge. And the pile of referrals was only slightly shorter.
Huh.
So
in the short pile.
Yeah. So you want to get in the short pile.
Yeah.
And then just persistence, because sometimes, um, you know, it may be a case where they don't have a spot for you at their agency, but 6 months later, they might.
Yeah.
And another great thing to research is if you come up with a list of agents that you are interested in, definitely go online and listen to their clients, because they may have too many of your type
Yeah.
at the agency. So maybe a good sign for you is if you listen down to the client list and you see a void that you could fill at an agency, maybe that's the agency or one of the agencies that you should be targeting.
That's smart. And it's interesting because we are all unique beings. We are all unique beings. And yet you kind of need to know how to classify yourself. Okay, well, I sound 20 to 30 typically in commercial things, and have that outside perspective too. And training is so good for that too.
Absolutely.
You studied musical theater, and then did you study voiceover specifically, or acting for voiceover and animation?
I got a theater degree in college with a voice, like a singing minor. And then after that, I was always one to take classes. Shakespeare is huge for video games. Honestly, I remember taking a Shakespeare class after I had started a Final Fantasy game, and I did the first recording session for Final Fantasy 12, and went and I took a Shakespeare class I was starting, and I came back for the next Final Fantasy session. They said, "We don't know what you did, but you sound more regal this time, or like something is more dialed in to the character's royalty." And I was thinking, it's Shakespeare. So we ended up re-recording some of the things that we had done in the first session. So never discount that can be helpful. Martial arts is great for video games because you have to do
physical martial arts.
Yes, I took Taekwondo for a number of years, and that helped me so much in video games because you learn to yell and scream safely. You learn how to put things in your diaphragm. You learn how to move things out of your throat. And you also learn how to be loud. And especially for women, you have to be able to tap into strength.
Yeah. That deep guttural comes from somewhere real.
Somewhere, because with video games, you'll have pages and pages sometimes of just reactions.
And different kinds of death by gas. One time I had, or death by bomb. And it's like, oh, what is the difference between those sounds? Yeah.
What's your weirdest death that you've ever had to do for a video game?
I guess death by gas. That's what I'm going to go with. Because it's slow and it's suffocated and it seeps in and all of those things. And that makes you think of other kinds of gas, and you're in the studio thinking about that. How about you?
and fun thing as I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, so exercise for you all out there. What if it was laughing gas?
Oh, hey.
Also toxic.
Have you had that?
So my most bizarre was in a game, I think it was called The Darkness.
Okay.
I got fed into a wood chipper. And my first question was, am I being fed in feet first?
That's a very good question.
Right? Because it's going to sound totally different if you're fed in feet first or head first.
And which one was it?
Feet first.
Okay. So you have more time to go through the process. Oh my goodness. I'm so curious as to what that sounded like.
It sounded gnarly. I'll just tell you that. It sounded real gnarly.
For some reason, I have some memory, and I don't know when it would have been that I saw it, but like your baby voices and your baby sounds were so... Did you do that for a specific project? Like, you're really good at it, I remember.
Thank you so much.
Maybe I think of that.
I actually do baby voices for a lot of projects.
Okay, that's why.
But here you go again for everyone out there. That came out of experimentation because I got an audition years ago for a baby voice. And I was like, I don't do baby voice. Like I don't do a baby. And my agent at the time said, listen, just try it. Just try it. So I was sitting around in my house, just experimenting with, you know, and then I just kind of stumbled upon some things that were interesting. And I was like, wow, okay. So I didn't get that job, but then I started to book other jobs. And now it's like something that I'm called for a lot.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
See, everybody practice. First, I'm sure it was research, listening to babies, lots of practice by yourself, being in a space where you feel safe to experiment and be uninhibited. Right? I'm walking them through your steps, and then going for it. At the end of the day, you're in the booth and it's just you and you have no idea what's going to come of you in this microphone. And you just have to make a choice that is strong and brings yourself to it and go for it. Right?
And go for it. And I think you really nailed it with the word uninhibited.
Yeah.
Because it's just play. It's playfulness and experimentation. And, you know, I've created some of my, I don't want to say best characters, but I've definitely created some characters out of terrible impressions. So if you're like, man, I can't do good impressions, great. Take terrible impressions.
That's very helpful.
Yeah. And use those.
I've never felt like voice matching is something I do a really great job at. I talked to Ashley Adler on another one of these, and she's awesome at voice matching, and she's a perfectionist or an expert at it now. So I'm going to use that. See, from our missteps, we learn and we create things when we are like Kari and incredible at what we do. I love it. Let's let ourselves learn. Let
ourselves learn. Actually, that's great.
Let ourselves fall, let ourselves make mistakes. And I want to rewind back just to highlight this. Kari mentioned getting a regional agent before getting one of her major cities agents, right?
Yes.
And so that is a really smart way to get into voiceover, because technically, regional agents won't be quite as competitive, although they still are, obviously, and they're amazing. The New York and the LA market, especially LA, is so many celebrities on their rosters. They just don't have time for people who are cold emailing or even sometimes recommended by people that they know. So that's great to know.
Yeah, and there are still people that I know now that have multiple regional agents.
Yeah.
And
raising my hand.
I was going to say, like, you have to make sure that you don't have an exclusivity clause with your agents, but that can be very successful for a lot of people. And so power to you.
Yeah, lucrative. Absolutely. Because we were talking about characters and all of that, are there like trends that you're seeing these days? Is it very as realistic as possible as commercial is in animation?
There are definitely some trends. There's a lot of like non-performance performing. So it will sound like you just grabbed someone off the street to read your part, who is a non-actor sound. So, I mean, I have mixed feelings about that. However, I will say that in a lot of adult animation, that's very popular. They want a conversational sound. They want your natural voice. So it's funny because, sometimes I won't book those, but then if they say, what else you got?
Yeah.
Then, sometimes I can, book something by showing versatility.
Yes.
Versatility is never a bad thing. But I will say again that if there are people out there that are saying, man, I can't do 100 different voices, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's also another reason that you have to really, really focus on your acting chops.
Yes.
Because you can have one voice, but you have to be able to know what to do with it.
Yes.
Or you've got to do one thing really well.
Absolutely.
So those are definitely trends. There's a lot of diversity casting right now. So if you are, a person of color, or if you are, anywhere on the queer spectrum, they're really trying to do more authentic casting with that. So there are opportunities there maybe that weren't there as much in the past.
That gives people hope. Because I know when I got into voiceover, the first thing I heard from this casting director in San Francisco when I was studying at ACT, she said, "You're never going to get in. It's so insular. You're never," she didn't have a New York accent, but now she does. "It's so insular. They use the same people over and over. They don't bring in new people." The definition of insular. And I was like, cool. Watch me. You tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna try harder.
I love that about you, by the way. This defines you. That is everything about you that you do goes back to that. It's amazing.
I'm a pusher, like the girl in Mean Girls. But found my way in. And so, yeah, that does, when you mention it's more open casting to new people, it's a wonderful world that we're in now.
Yeah.
I love it also.
I mean, the one thing I will say is that it is important to be ready for the opportunities that come along. So, make sure you're training, make sure that you are working on reading out loud. That's hugely helpful because a lot of times we don't get the scripts in advance.
Oh, yeah.
So,
or they make changes on the fly and you're like, oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, just don't blow your shot is what I would also say,
Absolutely. And always be training. Did you study improv as well? Because when we're talking about being so real and off the cuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did. I did a couple levels of the groundlings. I didn't get, to where I graduated from the program, but I did a number of groundlings classes. I did, Improv Olympics maybe. And, I did a Second City class. There's
just a bunch.
Just a bunch of different classes. Definitely a lot of scene study classes as well. And I used to take a lot more voiceover classes, but I've gotten to the point in my career now where I'm much, much, much more selective. Because I am at the point now where I trust myself to a certain point, and I'm very cautious about whose input I value.
I understand that because I don't know if you were raised to be a good girl and to listen to teachers, but it was a real, I'm sorry and I'm glad, but it was a real journey to all of a sudden trust myself instead of, not anything against teachers, and they're wonderful and it's great to get training, of course, but at some point you're in the booth by yourself and you need to be making decisions. And that is a certain kind of freedom. And I don't know, I just was in so many lessons as a kid that I wasn't taught to think for myself. It was always pleasing the teacher. So at some point, you gotta break away and do what Kari's doing. That's fantastic.
I love that you bring that up because there is a trap that you can fall into, and I fear that women fall into it more, of feeling like someone else knows better. And you do have to get to a point where you trust yourself. And you trust your own expertise, and you can rely on yourself. Also, because there are a lot of bad teachers out there, and there are a lot of bitter teachers out there. There are a lot of teachers out there that, and I see this a lot with my on-camera friends and my friends that take scene study classes. You have to beware the jaded artist.
Yes.
Because the jaded artists
money hungry
can only make themselves feel in a position of power by belittling others. So it is going to be their job to make you not trust yourself as an artist.
Absolutely. And break you down. I think that's so unnecessary.
And it's so unnecessary, but it's unfortunately very prevalent in the arts. And, everywhere from the college level. Well, I mean, it's probably younger. But definitely the college level on. So, I just think that, like for me now, a teacher would have to be somebody for voiceover that is working regularly.
Yes.
And offers a specific insight that I feel that I am lacking.
That outside perspective.
Excel in a certain thing that I want to improve on.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I've mentioned Mick Winger many times in this podcast, and I interviewed him on this podcast. So he's one of my go-to. But also go to someone, like Kari said, who's reputable, who is working. That's a reputable criteria, and who gets recommended to you by other people who are working. You know, don't just go to their website, which might be flashy. I mean, if it has testimonials, maybe verify those testimonials or reach out to someone who is a working voice actor and ask. That's what I would say.
And one recommendation that I do have to put out there, especially since we were just talking about how the world of voiceover is really kind of becoming a little bit more inclusive. JP Karliak does Queer Vox.
Oh, wow.
So for anyone who identifies on the queer spectrum, he specifically does a class to help you bring that to your voiceover career.
Amazing.
I think it's wonderful because, you know, now that if there's a trans character, they are trying to find a trans actor to do that. But like you were saying, if you are a trans actor, you want to be good. You know, you want to not only do your best in one job, but hopefully build a career.
Absolutely.
So I love the fact that he, you know, has really created this uniquely wonderful school and training series for that.
And I'm sure, you know, as it is difficult to see ourselves, we have to show that authenticity. And so I'm sure that that's what that class is showing. It's not about playing a stereotype or a cliche. It's about bringing your authentic self to it and letting that shine in a beautiful way, right?
Correct.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Do you still do like workout groups and stuff right now?
Not right now.
No.
Not right now.
Fair.
No.
Every job is a workout group.
It is.
Yeah.
I think what I would love to I don't know, this goes into a different subject, but I think for me creatively, I'm looking to expand at this point. And, you know, you and I were talking before this interview about our music, and, you know, I want to be searching more with my music projects and exploring more of my on camera or theatrical projects and things like that. And so I think now I'm looking more for a creative circle, maybe an accountability group. More, I know, right? I'm serious. Like, let's all talk because doing the work we know as artists, we get busy with our lives, and it's hard. And I just like that idea, and have a couple of friends who have really benefited from it. I like the idea of having even one other person who holds you accountable to what did you do for your creative journey this week?
Yourself.
What did you do for the business side this week? What are you working on? You know, what are you? So, yeah.
You know, we have to hold our own butts to the fire a little bit, but there's nothing like someone else doing it. Like, it's so true. And I have, you know, so many coaches for so many different things. I also, for some reason, when I'm talking about workout groups, like I imagine an ADR room to kind of be, because I've been sitting in movies and the credits are scrolling by just so I can get to that little nugget at the end to see what else, you know, they put in there that's fun. And then there goes Kari's name. And I'm like, oh my God, you did ADR. You know, so many times. Is that kind of like a masterclass because you're with so many great people?
It's you know, it's just a different kind of voiceover. And the best ones are when you get in with a group of people that are all like ringers. You know what I mean? When you get in with a group of people that are all at the top of their game, then it's, if nothing else, it's just inspiring because you get reminded of like, oh my gosh, we're in such a cool industry and there's so many good people. It can be very motivating.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What about self-directing? Do you record a take, listen back to it, and put on a different hat? Are you self-directing as you're acting, or is that too many hats at once?
No, that's a great question. I mean, with auditions, you have to self-direct.
Yes.
You,
Yeah,
you
that's what I mean.
I mean, I guess unless you're working with a coach, unless,
Mhm.
if you're out there and you're recording your auditions with someone. And again, I get very, very, very selective about that. Like I have pretty much one person that he'd be the one that I would call that if I'd be like, I'd love for you to record my audition. And a lot of times he'll just be like, that was great. Maybe just tweak this. And then that's it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. But a lot of auditioning is self-directing.
Mhm.
And again, I kind of go back to sometimes I'll have two takes on a character. Like I'll have two ways that I could really see it in my head. Sometimes I only have one way in my head, but I'll think, okay, well, if I push this direction more, can I do another take where there's more anger, there's more sadness about this situation? Because those are two very different reads, right?
Uh,
And then there are other times where I have one idea and one thought, and I'm like, I just feel strongly about this one.
that's an
Don't,
energetic thing.
that's an energetic thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do two or three takes every time. If you have
Yeah.
one solid thing, just go with the solid thing.
That's incredible. I remember my acting teacher from LA when I was doing on camera stuff. I could just tell he started booking more and more and more. And I was like, Brett, like, what is it that changed? Did you get new headshots from a specific person that I should go to? Like being the good girl, what's the homework I need to do? And his answer was so frustrating. He was like, Kayla, I got really clear about what I wanted. I started meditating. And I think it's this energetic force. And it just let me make decisions more clearly in my auditions. And I was just so frustrated with that answer, but it's absolutely correct. So do you think it's like an energy that gets you booking all the time?
Okay, I cannot believe that you're bringing this up because I am, and I'm like, what kind of meditation was he doing?
I know.
Do you remember?
I should have asked.
Because there's all these different kinds of meditation. But
Yeah.
I can't believe that you brought this up because that's where I am right now. Is I'm thinking a lot lately about energy and headspace, and it's interesting because that law of physics and object in motion stays in motion, and you get comfortable and you get into a groove with the things that you do well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're trying to expand into things that you either don't do well or that you are rusty at, you haven't done them for a while, it's a different thing. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do you energetically shift that over to new things, or how do you start manifesting the different goals that you want. So yeah.
It is interesting because I do think there is, you have to be open to letting yourself fall and fail and learn from that. But at the same time, there's that beginner's luck too, like when I walked up to my first roulette table in Vegas, like I got $336 and I was like, I thought it was 33 or something, and it happened. I was like, I can't play. But I do think there's the energy of, the new and approaching it. And then I guess there's the letting ourselves fall and still being kind to ourselves. You can talk about bullying in schools every day, right? But we can't bully ourselves for getting down. So maybe that's where the energy plays in, and letting yourself have that grace. I don't know. Maybe this is something we discover together.
How is that for you? Like, as you have expanded into all of these different entrepreneurial things with your music and the things that you're doing, what role do you feel energy is playing for you?
I am guilty of being a pusher and working too hard, and thinking that it needs to be my active energy. So letting go and trusting has been a real journey. And even with, before Kari and I got on, I was like, I got my first sponsor for Music with a Message, and it's incredible. Guess what that comes with? Letting go with a little bit of control, so there's that journey. I don't know if that answers it, but it's interesting. We can make this a therapy session and dive into that.
But I will be watching you, as I always do, with like anticipation and just seeing how you navigate that, because
But I
Yeah.
think you're right. An object in motion stays in motion. And when you're on the right path, sometimes things just come in so easily that you almost feel like you didn't have your hands on the wheel, but you do at the same time, because great things have happened from me taking control. Finally, after letting other people take control and me thinking again that I didn't have the answers. So maybe it's just that balance. It's all the yin and yang. I don't know.
And isn't letting go so hard?
Yeah.
So hard. Like, especially if you're raised to be a doer.
Yeah.
There's so many things about being a doer, and that letting go piece is.
Yeah. I know I need to let you go because you probably need to go do amazing auditions and work and all of the things. And you're incredible. And I'm so thankful for your time. So thank you so much. I could talk to you forever.
I could talk to you forever. The love goes two ways for sure. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. People, you can look her up everywhere. You have to see all of her things. She is so incredible. And you're just going to go down this treasure trove of talent and creativity. So look up Kari on all the places. I'll put links below. And thank you so much. Hey, this is Caley Rose again. And if you want to learn even more about how to get into voiceover, I have a course out called How to Get Into Voiceover, My Secrets to Six-Figure Voiceover Success. You can learn more about how to get into voiceover, what you need, how to find that ever so elusive voiceover agent, how to book auditions, how to find jobs, and more. You can also learn more about our special guest down in the show description below. Check it out.
Hey, I'm Caley Rose, and thank you so much for watching my video. If you like what you saw, subscribe.